right, Chair, if you want to start.
Okay. Good morning, it's 10:30. Welcome to the 37th meeting of the Cass Clay Food Commission. First on the agenda is to approve the order and contents of the overall agenda. This is an action item, so is there a motion to approve? Second? All in favor?
Do we have
Is there a motion?
yeah. Do you have a motion?
White moves to approve.
This is our second?
Seconded.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next on the agenda are the minutes for the meeting on November 10th. Hopefully you have had time to take a look at these. This is another action item. So is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve. Deb White.
A second? Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All in favor signify by saying
Aye.
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 opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next, we would like to officially welcome Jenna Cayley to the Food Commission. Jenna is a commissioner from Clay County and has been following meetings for most of last year. So welcome, Jenna. Is there anything you would like to say?
Just hi everyone. This has been a really fun meeting to follow, and I am so happy to be official in the group now. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Jenna.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dwayne Breitling. I just was able to dial in.
Yes.
Okay.
Next on the agenda is our Commissional Check-In. This is where members of the commission and steering committees are encouraged to share news, issues, or ideas related to food system work or other important topics in jurisdictions. Does anybody have any news they would like to share? Go ahead. Jeff, you have something to talk about, don't you?
Who, me, Mr. Chair? Did you say me?
Do you have any comments or?
No, I don't actually. I think we're just getting the year going again. So no, I didn't have anything.
Okay. Any other comments? Or news? Well, in the city of Dover, where our Dairy Queen is going to be up running here pretty soon, and our other development and the rails for more businesses are hopefully will be open by spring. So, any other comments? Okay. Next on our agenda is item 3: approve appointments at large members. Adam, would you like to speak?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Each year at this time, we look to approve the appointments of new at-large members for the Food Commission. We have 5 at-large members total, that each serve 2-year terms on a revolving basis. With Beth McConnell's departure and Janice Tweet's transitioning over to the steering committee, we had 2 openings this year. During our call for new members, we received 4 applications, and looking at those, the steering committee recommends the appointment of Anna Johnson and Joan Copperwood. Anna is a registered dietitian who works for Lakes and Prairies Community Action Partnership, and Joan is a recently retired professor of English from Concordia College. Before we have them maybe give a brief introduction to themselves, also want to note that Jeffrey Miller has agreed to serve an additional term. So the request to action is to approve the appointments of Ms. Johnson and Ms. Copperwood and the reappointment of Mr. Miller. But Chair, if it's okay, Anna and Joan, would you like to say a few words about yourselves?
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to my work on the commission. Thank you for appointing me to this position. I recently retired, as Adam said, from Concordia College after teaching. I was an English professor there for 31 years, but I've a long time had an interest and passion for different things related to food, sustainability, food insecurity, and I found myself doing a number of things, and most recently taking on the goal of reducing food waste at Concordia in their main dining room by 50% in 4 years. And even with the pandemic, we were able to achieve that goal. So I'm looking forward to finding opportunities where I can continue to serve the community. So thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you.
Morning, thank you as well. As Adam said, I'm a registered dietitian and I'm currently working as a nutrition manager with Lakes and Prairies Community Action Partnership. I was at NDSU, that's where I did my undergrad for 4 years. And while I was there, I was involved in a few different groups that were working with some local food and trying to reduce food waste. And then I also did an internship through Concordia, where I believe I actually spoke in one of Joan's classes about the plate waste study. So I'm very happy to be here and joining in on this work.
Thank you. Jeffrey, you have any comments?
No, I'm just happy to be back.
Okay. Thank you, Anna and Joan and Jeffrey, and welcome to the commission now. This is another actions item. So do I have a motion to approve the appointments and reappointments?
Approve.
I'll second.
Second. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Next on the agenda is item 4, mental health and food insecurity. Rory Bell from Clay County Public Health will be discussing this. So Rory, go ahead.
All right. I am. All right. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Looking good, Jim. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen? All right, awesome. Well, I'm Rory Beal. I've been asked to share a little bit about the intersection of mental health and food insecurity to this commission. And so I'll give you a little background. I'm the Health Promotion Director for Clay County Public Health. And I've been in this position for about 2.5 years. Prior, I came to Clay County to lead an initiative called Rethink Mental Health. Now, my training is in exercise physiology, but I've done a lot with community health promotion. And back in 2013, Fargo, Morehead, West Fargo, completed a community health needs assessment, the first one. Our hospitals, our public health institutions led that effort. And from that assessment came the identification that mental health was a priority need for our communities. So what does that mean? Well, it can mean 1,000 different things. My predecessor, Gina Nolte, helped form this coalition, Rethink Mental Health. And I was hired in 2015 to lead it. And so I've learned a lot. And one of the most prominent parts of what I've learned is about the impacts of childhood adversity and trauma, and how it impacts so many parts of our lives, and how important it is to understand it. But at that time, my understanding of it was that it was about neglect and abuse and family dysfunction, which were the common pieces that led to traumatic or adverse experiences. More recently, because of my role on the Hunger Coalition and the Food Council, have dug deeper into the impacts of chronic food insecurity. And so I'm going to try to advance my, let's see. And so this appears to maybe be a little bit of a busy slide, but I want to highlight this, that this is an example of how our body responds to stress and how it responds to chronic toxic stress. So you can see on the x-axis it says stress, and in response to that, our body releases a hormone. And if that stressor goes away, that hormone shuts off, and we return to homeostasis, if you will. If that stressor doesn't go away, our body releases more hormone and then more hormone. And so what is the relevance to food insecurity and hunger? Well, when you're hungry, your body produces cortisol, a stress hormone, and that stressor signals to your body to eat. And so I'm hungry, I get cortisol, I get physical signals to eat. If I don't have food, my body produces more cortisol and then more cortisol. And when prolonged, those effects are really negative. You can see on the right side of this, toxic stress produces cortisol, norepinephrine, and adrenaline. And that results in a constant feeling of hunger, poor blood sugar regulation, and insulin intolerance. And if experienced over long periods, can result in overweight, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, stroke, asthma, even genetic damage. And so we don't always think of hunger as maybe being a chronic stress like we might think of other traumatic stresses in life, but physiologically, it acts that way. And so often we think of the response to stress in our lives as fight, flight, or freeze, right? We're gonna be aggressive, we're gonna run away, or we're gonna withdraw. And there's evidence in the world of food insecurity that those are also responses that we might see if we're chronically hungry. In the world of schools have really adopted training on trauma-sensitive schools. And they look at the big common ones that we talk about, neglect and abuse, but sources of ongoing stress that might not have like an acute experience. It's not like somebody's drowning and you see this and need to respond to it. These are things that might fly under the radar, but chronically, they have a profound impact. So food insecurity, poverty, discrimination. Think of the kids in our schools that have frequent moves, or a refugee or immigrant experiences, what they and their families may have seen or experienced coming here. And we know that additional stressors can compound others. And food insecurity rarely happens in isolation. So that tells us that there are other stressors that often come along with it. And so if you take a look at what some of those are, when we have excess cortisol in our body, it reduces metabolism. So we might be lethargic. It increases the risk for depression, hypertension, chronic fatigue. Often we won't sleep well. You see hostility. And so there are a number of negative things that can come from chronic food insecurity. And so we know that it hurts us because of the overactivation and the hyperactivation of our body's stress management system, but it also has other impacts. People tend to spend their limited mental reserves focusing on what they lack. Hungry people focus on food, and that limits the bandwidth we have to do other things in our life, whether that's our work, focusing on academic performance, or maybe it's being empathetic or expressing social or emotional skills. Our bandwidth to do those things are less when we're focused on food. And of course, there's stigma. Families often work to keep their food insecurity hidden. They don't want people to know that. Kids are embarrassed that they're on the free and reduced food programs. So stigma is another manner that can amplify the response. And so the negative outcomes, one thing that we've learned in recent years is that hunger-related toxic stress can impair brain development. So if you can see me, what I understand about brain development is we have all these neural connections in our brain, and as we learn, our body prunes those, gets rid of connections that are less necessary, strengthens connections that are more necessary. That process is impaired when our body swims in stress hormones, and it affects our social and emotional learning and our academic performance. And again, Children may feel ashamed and isolated by their lack of food. And of course, if you could imagine, many of us probably have acute bouts of hunger, but we know that we can find food, or that we're going to be able to resolve that probably pretty easily. So the constant worry can cause mental health problems like depression and anxiety, and even post-traumatic stress. So when we think of post-traumatic stress, often that comes with military type experiences, but it's traumatic stress may look very similar to classic PTSD. And so that might come from that might result in nervousness, jumpiness, quick to react or startle, or the avoidance, kind of the flight part where we're feeling numb and we withdraw, we pull away from activities or relationships. These aren't things we often think about from hunger, but these are responses that are not uncommon, that they have a physical basis. So what's food insecurity's impact on mom? It doubles the chance that a pregnant woman will develop depression or anxiety. We know that pregnant women who are food insecure are 4 times more likely to display suicidal behavior, more than women who are victims, a higher rate than victims of domestic violence. That mothers who have school-aged children who face severe hunger are much more likely to show PTSD and have severe depression. Food insecurity increases for mothers of preschoolers. As it increases, they have more mental health issues. And of course, shame comes back in again. If you could imagine if you're a caretaker and you're not able to feed your children, that it's not a stretch to feel shame that you're letting them down. And the impacts on children: maternal depression has a significant impact on a baby's social and emotional and motor and movement development. That typically these children are less sociable. They have less ability to concentrate. They often have more behavioral issues, problems sleeping, eating, temper tantrums. And it's associated with anxiety and depression in children as well. Teens, our teenagers, they're trying to find themselves. Those who are chronically food insecure are twice as likely to have emotional and conduct problems. Hungry teens are significantly more likely to exhibit fighting. So we're back to fight and flight, stealing, disobeying teachers. And one of the things that I found interesting was that food insecurity is an independent, all by itself, it's a risk factor for mental health problems among adults. How about our older adults? This was pretty moving for those older adults that are on a feeding program, Feeding America. More than half are thinking about, they're making decisions about, am I going to eat, or am I going to take care of my medical needs or my prescriptions? Am I going to eat, or am I going to pay my utilities or my transportation needs or housing? Which is pretty scary to think about. More than half, or at least half, are making those decisions on a regular basis. Now, well, one of the things that I found compelling as I did research for this a number of months ago was how a good meal can affect our mood. And it was interesting that animal behavior is radically affected by the availability and the amount of food. So studies have shown that the willingness of many animals to take risks increases or declines depending on whether that animal is hungry or full. For example, a predator only hunts more dangerous prey when it's close to starvation. It takes higher risk. And this behavior has also been documented in humans. One study showed that hungry subjects took significantly more financial risk than their full colleagues. So it's leading to higher risk behavior. I'm going to show a pyramid in a minute that kind of pulls this all together with high risk behavior and its role. So let's take a look at our brain so we can see what's actually happening. So some cross sections, fasting versus a glucose rich brain. The top picture is a picture that blue means it indicates an absence of glucose. Glucose is the fuel for the brain to function. And so this brain on the top is in a food seeking mode. It's characterized by being distracted, irritable, restless, maybe anxious. The bottom, where you see it lit up, a cross section of the prefrontal cortex is characterized by being calm, focused, organized, and thoughtful, simply by ensuring that that brain has the fuel that it wants and needs. So some of us can maybe relate to the word or the experience of being hangry, right? We're hungry, and that affects our emotions and how we function and how we act and maybe how we treat others. And so I'm going to wrap this up with, this is a diagram that's used in trauma-sensitive schools training. And it shows a progression, the mechanisms by which adversity or chronic stress can influence health and well-being throughout a lifespan. So if we think specifically about food insecurity, that's an adverse experience. We've seen that it can create a chronic stress response. We know that it can disrupt neurodevelopment. We've learned that in recent years, that it can disrupt brain development. And with that, it increases the likelihood of impaired social, emotional, and cognitive skills. And when those are impaired, it increases the likelihood of adopting high-risk behaviors, increases the likelihood of disease and disability. And we know that chronic stress, untreated toxic stress, is related to early death. And so when I first was asked to talk about this at a hunger coalition, I wasn't really aware of the connection between chronic food insecurity and the impacts along the lifespan. And so I'm hopeful today that I could shine the light a little bit on why it's important that our residents have easy access, affordable access to healthy foods, and how important it is for them to be functioning members of our society. So, does anybody have questions for me?
As part of this research, did you do any investigations into what it would cost for Fargo or Morehead to make food available at schools at, no monetary cost to the students?
Oh, great question. Sounds like a good project to take on. I didn't address that. I know we have Taylor on the call. I don't know if she can add something. She knows maybe more about that world. I didn't dig into that.
Yeah, great question. I think the data exists. I think there is data. I would guess that it's by county. Yeah, thank you, Mary. I don't have it at the ready, but I think that's a good project for some folks to tackle and kind of uncover what that dollar amount is, because the economic impact far outweighs the social impact.
Maybe that'll be an intern project in the halls of Clay County Public Health.
Rory, I'm wondering, we see more where places in our criminal justice system where we're working on providing, diversion programs or programs to, address issues rather than having people just become incarcerated, like drug courts and things like that. But obviously there's a real connection here. And so I'm wondering, have you seen any models where they have used things to work at addressing food insecurity for folks to help them, it's just to work at, since there is such a connection to it, that it might help them divert from, behavior that would increase their likelihood of being within the criminal justice system?
Great point. I have not, but when we look at it increasing the likelihood of high risk behaviors, I haven't even thought of that. So unfortunately, I'm not much for answers, but I think that's a great connection to look at.
If I could just jump in for a second at an AMC, our annual conference that we had coming up in December is when it was. Stearns County talked about a project that they have, and I believe they called it their community action team. I'm just flipping through my notes here. What they did with this team is they identified, those high users of resources and also folks that are in and out of incarceration situations. And they sat down with them and just had a one-on-one conversation to ask them what keeps you coming back to this situation. And they have found that the answers that they get are very surprising. And it is things like hunger in their families. And so then they're able to tackle that challenge from a different direction than some of the more traditional programs that we see. So that might be something we want to think about and look at a little bit in our area here too.
I have something to add about the school lunches. If you look under USDA and school lunch payments, at the start of this school year, the lunch rate for participating schools was already 15% higher than the standard reimbursement for a free lunch. Now, because of higher food costs and other circumstances, schools will receive an additional 25% per lunch. Taken together, schools are receiving 22% more for school lunches than they would under normal circumstances. So at least right now, there is a coverage. I also want to say that there was just a recent fundraiser in which young people are getting free milk, I believe, in all three of our major school districts of Morehead, Fargo, and West Fargo. So that is another thing that is happening to increase the healthier food. So I refer you to USDA.gov. There is a lot there.
Jenna, if you have a contact with Stearns County, I'd be interested in that. Or somebody who I could follow up with.
Yeah, I'll get that for you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thoughts?
Yeah, thank you so much, Rory. That was a really excellent presentation and research, and I learned a couple of things I wasn't aware of before. I'm just wondering, we've heard so much with COVID about increasing needs around mental health, especially youth mental health, but also this kind of destigmatizing that's happened and maybe increased support. So I'm just wondering if you could kind of talk about the landscape with COVID, if things are getting worse, if it feels like maybe we're starting to make progress because we can at least talk about these issues more. If you have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear that.
Well, I do have some thoughts on it. I try to follow what's happening with trends. I have a couple of college-age kids, a high school student, and so I think we're heading in a good direction, and maybe need to come out of a not so good direction. And one is that what I see, read, and hear is we're much more comfortable. We're becoming much more comfortable to talk about and to get help when something isn't right. It doesn't have to be that there's something physically wrong, but the indications are that we're more likely to seek help. I think COVID, however, has masked a lot of that, and particularly people who, and I say children in need, who might have had interactions on a regular basis with caring adults, lacked that for significant periods of time. They didn't have easy access to systems of support. And so I do hear about increased suicidality, increased rates of mental health, depression. And so I hope as we return to school systems where those are available, and there was a period of time where I know our New American friends in Morehead weren't able to, they approached me because they couldn't access some of the services in the county because our building was locked. So now that those things are returning at least somewhat to normal, I think we'll have kind of a delayed indicator of that. but it feels like we're heading back in the right direction. Hopefully we can head some of them off at the pass.
Any other questions for Rory? Thank you, Rory. Next is item 5, first thing presentation on food questions from callers. An agenda, Kesla Savajo, who served on the community outreach coordinator for First Link, was originally going to present, but she had to have conflict today. So instead, Jennifer Illich, First Link Executive Director, is here with us to share some information. Welcome, Jennifer, and pass it on to you.
Well, I want to thank you all for inviting us to your meeting today to present on some of the numbers. Thanks, Roy. That was fascinating information that you pulled together related to food insecurities. So we want to talk about the numbers that we get at First Link. So First Link, just for you know, we answer the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and the 211 phone lines. We have a directory of resources. So in our 3 main cities, we have a lot of food pantries, a lot of places for people to reach out and get food. But it's important for people to know where to go to get that food. So that's one thing First Link does, is we put it all together in a directory. Our directory, you can dial 211 to get the information in our directory. You can go to our website and you can do your own search for the information, or you can text your zip code to 898-211 to get that information. But Chelsea wants to talk about our numbers that we had and the amount of people that called our 211 phone line in order to get that information. We'll share our screen if that's okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I was asked by Rory to kind of come up with the numbers for the whole year of 2021 for Cass and Clay County. So basically what I did, I don't know if people can see my screen. It shows that you guys, oh, thanks for the thumbs up, Nicole. Okay, so of the Cass and Clay County, this first tab combines both counties, but I did break it down individually as well. So in the first here, you'll see the number of calls that came in where we gave out resources. So this might not be the number of calls, but the number of resources given out for food pantries was 720 in the Cass and Clay area. If we were to look at how many were Cass of the 720, a lot of them came from Cass County, which was 612 of those 720 for food pantries, and 108 for the Clay County area, where a resource was given out, that many resources were given out for the food pantry topic. So we have these different like search terms in our database where we'd search and then provide that need to someone. So food pantries was the highest number there. Next is like a food voucher. We gave out 6. And as you can see here, I just kind of did all the food related topics varying from food pantries, baby formula, food banks. And then I kind of was just like anything food related. So down at the bottom, you'll even see like animal food or pet food up here. Sometimes we get really busy around the seasonal holiday, where homeless are looking for a Thanksgiving meal or a Christmas meal or Easter. So I try to put those as well for the data. And then I have emailed Rory this information, but if anybody else wants it, I believe we could just forward this information on to you. So this is just for 2021. So in total of all those topics, which I could come up with for food related, came to about 1,200 resources that were given out this year for food. And of that, 977 were Cass, 180 were Clay. And that's over the phone. Now, Jennifer spoke to how individuals can text us or they can go on our website. So I don't know if you guys wanted us to kind of display how to look for this in resources on our website, but I can definitely show you. Okay, Nicole again shaking her head. Nice work. So I'll go ahead and share the screen. Oh, Noelle, not Nicole. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so I gotta stop sharing this one and share the screen here. Maybe we'll do this way. So then here, I'm going to go to myfirstlink.org. And as you can see, we have a community directory. I think they can hopefully see it. Okay, so then underneath food, it breaks it down by emergency food, which goes even further. So that's where you're going to find those food pantries, food or baby food, prepared meals. It breaks it down to soup kitchens. So there's very specific terms for each program that's added to our database. We kind of try to figure out what search terms best fit their program. But down beneath, if you're looking for a specific area, so did you guys say Stearns County, or we could do Fargo?
It searches by county. So the biggest fault in our website is that we have to wait till the county pops up, and it's always a little bit slow. So if you do Fargo, comma, so go back one and do comma, you have to wait till it pops up as Fargo, Cass County, North Dakota, so you're not going to get a very good search. So what you'll do is get a search of all of our area. We're in the conference room and our internet's probably a little bit slower in here than most places.
You see sometimes that drop down appeared, but Fargo would do the same. And then you just hit kind of search in the Fargo area. Well, you have to really wait.
It didn't grab Fargo, Cass Clay is why. So you have to wait till it says Fargo, Cass Clay, or Cass County. There it is. So did you see that drop down now? So that's one thing we can't fix on our website, but once you find the location, and usually it is really pretty quick. We just have kind of a low spot of internet in this conference room. So then we do.
And if you're kind of like patience is a virtue and you don't have time to wait for the drop down, just call us. We're here 24/7. So that's good to know. Because we can have the same, you're looking at the same database that we would look at, but maybe it goes quicker for us on the phone. And then what's nice is maybe, and this works for not just food pantry, but maybe counseling or anything, but sometimes people are like, I only have certain insurance. So this kind of helps narrow down the 24 resources if you had a certain payment or telehealth, COVID related stuff. But if you scroll down in our Fargo area, we have 24 food pantries in our area. What's nice about FirstLink versus Google is if you were to search food pantries in Fargo and on Google, not all 24 are going to pop up. So it's going to look like we have less when we have more. So FirstLink's better than Google. And then we would click on, like, let's say Olivet Lutheran Food Pantry. The information that's provided to us is also more. So we have the physical location, their telephone number, a main contact, and when they're open. So for instance, this food pantry is open the third Monday of every month from 4:30 to 6:30. And it even shows information on eligibility. How you can do it is you just walk in, there's going to be a register table. So we kind of have a lot of information. And this particular food pantry actually serves both areas, both Cass and Clay. And then it shows kind of more information on volunteer, a whole bunch of stuff. And that's kind of how a variety of these food pantries are.
And one feature we added is this Google Maps. So kind of on the right side of the screen, it shows all the food pantries. So I really like that. You know, do like the scroll out. Yeah. I really like that because if somebody has food insecurities, they're going to have maybe not very good transportation or low gas in their car. So they can look at their address and then find the food pantry that's closest to them. So like number 4 is related to number 4 on our page. So then they can really pinpoint it so they have less distance to travel to get their food.
That was like a quick, brief overview of how we kind of work the database and how to navigate the website. Does anybody have any questions on the numbers or information presented? I did really good, huh? No.
I have a comment thinking about both Rory's presentation and now your follow-up. This is really very helpful. One of my, I'm the professor in, emeritus in residence to work with the Concordia Food Pantry. They started one in 2020. And we're open only 2 days a week. And I think some of the resources that you're identifying will be really helpful. And again, thinking about Rory's comments about related to mental health. Again, he did school-age children and then, adults and, parents and jump to the older adults, but we're finding increased number of food insecure in some of our international students as well. So both presentations are very helpful for my work at the Concordia Food Pantry. So I will probably be in touch and we can do more conversation. So I wanted to thank both of you.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, we can, if you want to put your contact information in the chat, then I can email you our data collection form to get added into our database, because that would be great.
This is Deb. I just wanted to say, because I think this is such a great tool, and I saw some information about this on one of my other committees for the opioid overdose coordinated response team, and it, looking at how do we have this more centralized location for resources rather than different people trying to come up with resource guides for different things. So I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about that, like how do you make sure? This came up at our meeting. How do they make sure that the information is up to date? And, if people want to get added on there or anything like that, what do they need to do?
Sure. So I know up-to-date information I did the numbers. I'm new to the coordinator role. I've been here about a year now, but I did the numbers and we have over 2,000 agencies in our database. So yearly, we kind of separate 2,000 divided by 4. So I'm not contacting all 2,000 at once. So each quarter, I give an agency 3 months to update or look at what we have listed for them to verify and make those changes or updates on a yearly basis. Of those 2,000, I only have 43 that have not contacted me back. So at that time, I have to start kind of digging more deeper, look online myself or make calls. But for the most part, we have over 95% verification yearly. So once a year, these agencies are letting us know if there's no changes, or maybe this person retired, or they have a different location now, or their hours changed. So they let us know on a yearly basis. If someone wants to be added to our database, a lot of it's us reaching out to them. But as you saw with Ms. Copeland, they would just contact me at me personally, or I reach out to them, or they can, I think it's an internal info, or they reach out to you a lot.
Info at my first link. So just for you know, too, Deb, we have a national accreditation for our database. So it's AIRS, it's the Legion of Information and Referral Systems. So they come into our office, or they did a virtual, and they go up and down and in our database. So there's a total, it's like a national accreditation. There's a rule book that we follow. So everything has to be updated every year in order to keep our accreditation. So we have 3 staff that work on our community directory that that's their job, is to keep it updated. They're all the time reaching out to people to make updates, and then looking for new for-profits and nonprofits to add into the database.
I just, first of all, thank you both so much for that presentation. Really enjoyed it. Our network, Cascade Food Partners, very briefly during COVID, tried to maintain a list of community food resources on a Google Doc, and just quickly realized how challenging that is. And that no one is doing as good of a job as First Link in really compiling this information, keeping it up to date, sharing it out. So just huge gratitude to the work that you do, and a little tiny bit of appreciation from my own perspective of the huge challenge that is. I was really interested to see the documentation of community needs based on the calls that you're getting from people and how those numbers played out. And I'm just curious, in addition to kind of tracking that for your own purposes, it feels like that's really powerful information that could be shared with government so that we know, what are the needs in our community. Maybe there's even a way to get a sense of gaps in resources. So I'm just wondering, how do you kind of use and share that information, if you do, in terms of thinking, how can we better work with organizations or others to meet the changing needs of the community?
And that's a great question. And we do share our stats with a lot of government agencies. So through, well, some of our stakeholders and funders like Cass Clay United Way and Souris Valley United Way, but also a lot of government entities. So like the suicide, like Mariah Opp with the suicide prevention, Pam Stagnitz gets a quarterly report, and then like Jeff Herman from Field Services. And they do use that data to kind of find gaps in the service of North Dakota. If there's other people to add to our list, you know, it's our stats lists are getting larger and larger all the time. Chelsea is pulling up just this year. We added a data dashboard right on our website. It has a lot of great information. So they did a great job with our dashboard. It shows once a month is updated, and it shows the numbers that are coming in different areas.
So we can break it down based on what Noelle had asked, as how many calls and what the needs are, and you can kind of utilize this. So this is pulling up the whole entire year of 2021. But if you go up to the top, you can change the date if you just want to look at 1 month at a time. It shows our total contacts at the top, but at the bottom here under the geographic tab here, it right now is displaying all North Dakota counties. But if you just wanted to look at Cass, or I think even Clay is listed on here. Yep, Clay's down here, but you would scroll to pick out whatever one you'd want. So let's just look at Cass. And the need right now for the number of calls coming in is for housing. Food is number 4, so it is, and that's just based on the number of calls we're getting. So yeah, that would kind of answer those questions. And then if you wanted to take this information to a meeting and didn't have the capability of a computer, you can always download right here, download the PDF, and it'll display all this information for that county too. And then you would just print off your PDF and take it to your meeting. Outside of the needs of the callers, we have crisis tab here. That just kind of displays how often our callers that are feeling suicidal ideation, at what level they are. And I think you can even break that down by Cass or whichever county you want to. And then there's an overview tab as well that kind of summarizes what we just went over for the needs area. So we try to make it as much public information as we can, because it's important information to know.
And we definitely hear what Rory presented over the phone. So when somebody calls us for food insecurity, they might start like, I have no food to feed my kids, but then we're trained to answer the suicide lifeline too. So then we ask further questions, say things like, it must be hard that you are not having financial trouble this month, what's going on? Then we hear about depression or anxiety and loss of job. So then we can use our directory to give people other areas too. So we can link them to therapy, we can link them to job service to look for jobs, we can link them to other resources in the community. So you're right, a lot of people call us because of the roots need of food or housing, but then there's a lot of underlining interventions that we can help link people to when we get them on the phone.
And also, like to expand on that, like someone might just call us for rent, and then our call specialist, not all the time, might be like, besides rent, are you doing okay with electricity, food? So like, even if their need isn't food right away, we can underline, kind of think, okay, if they're struggling with rent, maybe they're struggling with food, and we can get them that. Because it's hard to ask for help. It's hard to call on the phone and say, I need some help.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on our agenda is our public comment opportunity. Just a reminder, there is now a new comment form link that is sent out with the meeting agenda and packet. We received one comment from Rick Hall, who is here to talk about the MDA Urban Youth Food and Ecology Initiative. Rick? Go ahead.
Okay, am I unmuted? Good, okay. So thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. Thanks for the tip, Deb and Jenna, to tune in here. I feel like I've already figured out a couple of people that I need to be in touch with just by sitting here and attending the meeting. So I think this is a good gathering place for like-minded people. We are submitting a proposal to the Minnesota Department of Agriculture Urban Youth Grant Program. Its focus is on youth. And I thought maybe I could share my my screen. And I have sort of a boring sheet of paper here, but we can I can show you some pictures later if we have time. So let me see. Okay. Let's try this. Oh, well, the wrong thing came up. But anyway, this is a support letter from Churches United, which is something I think I've already passed on to a couple of you. Let me try again. Sorry, I had this queued up on my other computer and then realized I didn't have any sound. Let me just talk about it, and then if as I look for this, I'll put the document up. But basically, we want to start a youth food and ecology initiative, seeing some needs and gaps that you were referring to before, and I guess one of our prompts for doing something like this is some of the work we've been doing in terms of difficulty accessing land for urban agriculture, and it being the perennial problem of any new farmers, and particularly BIPOC farmers and families having access to land for gardening and farming. And so this is echoed by Kamaluddin, for example, at New American Development Agency, that most of his families live in apartments and have no access to land on which they can garden. And so they need community garden space. And unfortunately, we have a lack of this in our community, and we want to do something about it. So we have put together with many partners an idea of creating a demonstration and teaching garden at the corner of 4th Avenue and 9th Street South on ground owned by the First Congregational UCC Church. And looking at the building, the kitchen, the parking lot, and then the backyard next door as places where we can demonstrate backyard gardening. We can show raised bed gardening, high tunnel, season extension, and a number of things involving youth in all of these things. Let me just, wasn't anticipating access problems here.
Rick, are you looking to pull up the letter that you emailed us earlier this morning?
Yes.
Let me try to pull it up here quick.
Okay, that's good.
Say, Rick, this is Mary Larson talking. Could you say again where this building is that has a kitchen and these other opportunities that you just mentioned?
Sure. 4th Avenue and 9th Street South, Morehead.
And is that an organization? Does an organization own that building, or?
It's First Congregational
Okay.
United Church of Christ.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Boy, Churches United really wants to come up. So, I mean, this gives a testimonial about why we need this.
No, Rick, I think we're not seeing a letter. What we see is, it starts off by the top of it says Multicultural Food and Ecology Center to be proposed to the MDA Urban Agricultural Program. Is that what you were looking for?
That's the one I wanted to show you.
We can see it.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right. So I found it now. Yeah. So basically the definition of the agri-urban program is there at the top. And we really want to involve youth in coordinating getting fresh food to people who need it. And this was prompted by an experience we had this summer. We have a farm. We had a load of winter squash we wanted to give away. And so first we went to the Churches United kitchen, and they didn't want it. They were overwhelmed at the moment with produce. We could dig deeper there about why they didn't want it, but we went over to Dorothy Day and found that, oh yes, they were more than happy to get it, and they wanted to us to know that they had been having trouble getting fresh produce for the whole season, and how important it was because there was increased demand during COVID, and particularly now since the rent subsidies had expired, that people were starting to pay their rent instead of feed themselves. And so this just struck us that there are still coordination issues in spite of all the great work that's been done, and that maybe youth could be one of the keys to develop a kind of database. But then also, obviously, First Link has a wonderful database. So how do we put a human element in there to help people access all these wonderful resources? And then how do we refine the process? Again, New American Development Agency highlights that a lot of their people, there's a stigma for them about going to a food shelf and accepting free food and wondering whether it's really good quality. And so they don't go to, a lot don't go to food shelves. And so we were brainstorming ideas about how we could move around that. So I'm thinking we want to, some of these gaps, that let's say somebody from the Somali community might not go to First Link, or if they did, they might not go to the pantries. And so how do we deal with that? And then how do we deal with the fact that there's farmers out there that would be more than happy to donate produce, but they don't know. And even I'm really pretty familiar with these issues, and even we had a hesitancy about, oh, they won't want that. They probably already have too many tomatoes. So this notion of how the various pantries who want fresh produce could communicate more directly with the farmers. And we've got a couple of ideas about that. And then this whole issue of access to land, training, and resources. So we'd be doing some of this right here at 4th Avenue and 9th Street, but we'd also be, by piloting this demonstration teaching garden and showing how to replace parking lot surfaces with pervious surfaces that will drain water in a more efficient and environmentally sound way. And then at the same time, use some of this excess space. Right now, the church says, for example, they only use half of their parking lot. So the rest of it is available for food and ecology related things. Then seeking additional sites. So this would be a demonstration site, but we would continue to look for sites closer to where people live. This would be great for the Comstock neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods, but down south of 94, maybe there needs to be another site. There's a Native American woman who has a garden in Dilworth, and she's willing to be a teaching place too. So, and then the final thing is that we want to combine a lot of this into a food and ecology career pathway or pathways, partnering with the Morehead schools, for example, at their new career development center, and with others, because one of our experience in environmental education, for example, in K-12 schools, is that the kids have increased environmental literacy, or in this case, food literacy, but that doesn't necessarily lead to a job. And so we have to have the economic development component. And so we could have a lot of BIPOC youth and families involved in food production, other aspects of the food chain, food-related businesses, and also in ecology, that if you go to a national park, well, more and more you can see people of color as rangers and so forth, but all of the environmentally related agencies and organizations are seeking people of color to join their staffs. And those, in some ways, we have to steward a whole new generation of young people who will seek out those kinds of occupations instead of thinking, well, they have to go to work in, you know, a big business or even an agribusiness, if they're going to be able to survive. And what we know about the immigrant community is a lot of people, even educated immigrants, are stocking shelves at Walmart. And so we need to create more opportunities for folks who can explore some of these other career opportunities. And that means a comprehensive education web that can start looking at making these connections. Now, I know there are already really good efforts going in the Fargo-Moorhead area, so we don't need to necessarily invent the wheel, but linking some of these things seems to be important. And then linking, for example, the people at New American Development Center with some of these resources. So maybe I should stop. What questions do you have?
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak at this time?
If I may, oh, sorry.
I'll pop in. Rick, this seems like a really ambitious project and goal that you have here. And it sounds like you have a grant due tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And part of why Rick wanted to come and speak to this group today was he was hoping that there would be interest from this group in writing a letter of support for that grant proposal. So I was wondering if we wanted to have any discussion about that as a group, if this seems like a good fit for this group to support something like that.
Jenna, this is Mary Larson. So up on the top there, it says 2020, Rick. So is this grant indeed due tomorrow of 2022?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
There's multiple drafts of this, and obviously I put one up there that didn't, this is the wrong date. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, yes, indeed, it's tomorrow. I'd say in relation to that, we attempted to put together a proposal last month to USDA for a community food project, which is a much larger grant. And we just decided that we didn't have adequate time, but the next opportunity for that grant will be November 2022. And so this project will feed into that in terms of being able to have a more reasonable time to develop a more comprehensive plan. Yeah.
Rick,
Oh, go ahead.
Just very briefly, Rick, I do have the letter that you sent. Would you be able to stop sharing your screen, and I'll share mine so that the commission can take a look at this here quick.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Can everybody see this all right? So this is the letter that you were looking for us to maybe to sign on for as a letter of support for this initiative?
Yeah, Jenna said that it would be helpful to be working from a draft that you can change so any or all of it can be rewritten, but this is a basic idea.
This is Deb. I'll just chime in a little bit because I support, you know, Rick and I actually met, and I do support the work. The one thing I think is really important, and this is maybe a bigger issue, is just making sure that we're coordinating on things. And this is, you know, I think very often in our community, we're not that big of a community, and it's, you know, making sure that when we're working on different issues that we're not duplicating, that we're bringing, you know, bring people together and sharing resources and supporting each other. And so I think just having you here, Rick, is really helpful. And I would, you know, like, be happy to hear from those on the commission who have a lot more experience of what's happening to make sure that, you know, is this something that you feel would be a good addition and not duplicative and not competing with other things that are already being done. So that would be my one question to the other commissioners. And then, but otherwise, you know, I think where we can use our voice and to try to support efforts like this, I think that we should.
Okay, is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak at this time?
I just, to Deb's point, last night I was able to access a proposal that was written to the same funding source last year by some other illustrious members of our food community and sustainability community, which I found to be excellent, and it was not funded. And but also I didn't know about it. So there are elements of similarity, and so that point that Deb just made is that the imperativeness of working together on all of these things so that we don't have wasted effort. Because, you know, maybe I could have contributed the little piece that would have made that fundable, and maybe not, you know, but I look forward to that kind of process, and I'm very glad to be here with you all today. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick.
My one comment, there are 2 gardens, and Mary Larson is very involved in one of them. There are 2 gardens in South Morehead affiliated with churches, reaching out to the New American community. I work with Growing Together Gardens in Fargo, and just as an FYI, since COVID started, we have had very, very few of our New Americans come and join us in the gardens because of the fear of catching COVID there, even when we were mandating masks. So that's something you need to consider. The other thing I have seen or experienced in Fargo through that is they had schools involved, and then if a teacher moved, they would lose the teachers who were coordinating it. So Rick, I would really highly recommend that you talk with the high school or the junior high and see if there is some means of young people gaining credit by being involved in the garden so that they will continue to come the whole time, and you won't have problems with gardeners, because our gardens fell on those of us who were in leadership positions the last year especially, and even 2 years. And will you have enough gardeners to make this a success to apply again next year for that? You need to make sure you've got the gardeners in place to make it successful. So just suggestions based on my experience in growing together.
You're tagging on to that. So when Rick and I talked, I connected him with Brandon Lunak, because I'm not sure where they're at with this right now, but the Career Academy in Morehead has talked about, they have a culinary track, and they've looked at doing food production, doing some gardening, having the students grow their own food and then cook it. They were looking at having, I think, some, sale of food on site and things like that. And also working on food insecurity. I know they already have a food pantry for students at the Career Academy that have food insecurity, but helping to work on that. And so to me, that would be just a great way to build on that and coordinate with the Career Academy on ways that students can get involved in a variety of ways.
Hey Deb, can you nudge Brandon about this, because I haven't heard anything yet from the school district. I think we can say some things, we can reference the Career Academy without necessarily having an okay, but I'd much rather make a stronger statement. We intend to, or potential partners might be, we can put that in the proposal, but I'd love to be able to say, yeah, we've talked with the Career Development Center in the schools and they're interested in collaborating with us, something like that. So.
Thanks, Rick. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak at this time?
So Rick, this is Mary Larson, and I just want to follow up to what Deb said, because she said that I've been pretty heavily involved in a community garden in South Morehead for several years, and also with some other food justice initiatives, including SNAP, EBT acceptance at our local farmers market, and a food justice practicum, which we're doing a little renovation on that. And so when you are talking about this proposal, I got really interested because I could see a lot of connectivity, and would be really interested in following up with you. There could be some potential for the food justice practicum graduate student in public health to do some work with this and to help kind of pull these connections together, maybe even some grant writing. So, some bigger picture kinds of things. So I would love to have an opportunity after the call to follow up with you some.
Good, thank you. One of the, I know I'm hogging the show here, but in this chat, I put several models that I'm working from, that I'm pretty familiar with. And you can just click on them. They each have really good websites. The Youth Farm and Market Project, the Love Lunch Community Project, and the Edible Schoolyard are three sort of action-oriented projects. And then I also put a link to Ken Meter's book site, Community Food Webs. He has really studied this stuff all around the country, and particularly has followed food banks and local food plans that integrated or went beyond giving away food, but really focusing on developing careers in food-related businesses for the recipients of this free food. So I think it's a great resource to look at. I just wanted to highlight those.
Thanks, Gary. Anybody else?
Sounds like great research.
Anyone else in the audience like to speak? Stan? Okay, now we'll move on to item number 7, Commissioners and Steering Committee Roundtable. Does anybody else have any comments on today's meeting or any additional news or events to share? Go ahead. Okay.
Well, it looks like Deb does.
Okay.
Are we going to resolve the question of whether we're going to sign on a letter of support? That was my, just wanted to make sure we didn't lose that.
Rick, is this something that we could revisit in March? I know you said that there's a grant application due tomorrow, but can we still, if we had a little bit more time to discuss this and maybe a little bit more information, is this something that we could potentially sign a letter of support at our March meeting?
We could use, support at any point. And I certainly want to continue this conversation with all of you, actually. But in terms of this particular grant, it would be really helpful to have a generalized, I tried to keep the commitment really open in that letter, a generalized letter of support to this particular funding source, particularly since they turned down a similar ask last year from Morehead that was submitted by the city. And like I said, our stellar sustainability and food partners. And so it would strengthen the proposal if we had a voice from the Cass Clay Food Commission.
So we're looking at drafting a letter and support.
Okay. Do other commissioners have thoughts on this, or?
Any comments from commissioners?
Not from me.
Commissioner White, did you have a direction or?
It's tough. I feel pretty new to the commission still, so I was waiting to hear what people, I don't know what that in terms of protocol and things. So as I said, I would in general, be comfortable supporting it, but I wanted to hear from the other commissioners who have more experience and, whether you felt this is an appropriate action and isn't duplicative. Otherwise, I would support it.
And those of you who are new commissioners may not realize that several of us that are pictured here and at the meeting, we are steering committee. We cannot propose, we cannot vote on issues. So if you see a lot of us remaining silent, that is why.
Okay.
And it's really hard for some of us to be quiet. I'll just say, as someone who won't be voting on this, but a longtime steering committee member, that the language in the letter looks to be pulled from our mission, vision, and off of our Cass Clay Food Partners website. So it's doesn't appear to be making any huge new claims or anything like that.
Could we maybe just pull that letter up one more time, Adam? I was wondering if there were a few changes that we might want to make. Like, I think I saw on there that the meeting was bi-monthly, but it's not, it's once a month.
Top line of the second paragraph below the bulleted list.
Mm-hmm.
We have five meetings a year.
Yeah.
I wonder if a motion could include directing the steering committee to work with Rick to finalize any kind of points of clarification on the letter.
I would
Be
like
much more comfortable with that. Yeah.
I would make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second.
Second.
Jenna Kaylee.
Who was second? Sorry.
Jenna Kaylee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion been passed. Okay. Anybody else have any comments on today's meeting or any additional news or events to share? Go ahead.
The Folkways has their first winter market the first weekend of February. And we are seeing strong interest in that. So I know that there are a couple groups exploring possibly doing like food makers markets through the winter in the future. So this is kind of an important part of building that.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, then we go on to item eight.
I'm sorry, I always do this right at the end. I have something to celebrate. I hope he doesn't get too mad at me for sharing. But our own Rory Beal was recognized last month by the city of Morehead for a More Heart Award, which is a great thing that we do in the city to recognize leaders and people who really are giving their heart to improve our community and make things better for everyone. So I just wanted to put Rory back on the spot and say congratulations and just make sure that everyone was aware of this.
Thank you.
It was actually the Moreheads Human Rights Award. So we give out the Human Rights Commission awards every year, and we only pick a few every year, and Rory was one of them. But because of he has such great more hearts.
Well, thanks for clarifying that, Deb. So that's an even bigger deal. Way to go, Rory.
Thank you.
Any additional news or events?
I have one. This is from the library system, not the county. So my other hat, sorry. April 5th, we have a cookbook author panel coming up, and they are Minnesota cookbook authors who are actually very well known and have won James Beard Awards. So it's Zoe, and I'm like just Zoe Francois. So if you've read any of the like Artisan Bread in 5 Minutes a Day books, she wrote those, and she has a multitude of others as well. And then Beth Dooley, who really focuses on seasonal local eating in a lot of her cookbooks. She also co-authored the Sous Chef's cookbook, if you're familiar with that. Anyway, that'll be a virtual author panel coming up in April on the 5th.
Okay. Any other additional news? Okay, now we'll move on to item 8. Commission action steps. The next First Friday is scheduled for February 4th at 701 Eatery in Fargo. The agenda stated February 7th, but maybe this is a mistake. So it's February 4th. Next commission meeting will be March 9th. And it will continue to be Fargo meetings. Probably the rest of the year too, or all meetings scheduled for this year will be that. So things aren't getting better, they're staying the same. Any other comments? Could I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
So second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion passed. Thanks for coming, and have a good day.